Hello everybody and welcome to another video. I am here today to talk to you guys about my progress with Herkiet. Herkiet is the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do. This is a challenge set up by the channel QWERTY. I will have the announcement video for this round of it linked in the description box, but a lot of people have been doing it, so you might already know about this. The hardest reading challenge you'll ever do is basically a reading challenge that is comprised of many reading challenges. There are basically many categories of challenges for which you will have to read multiple books. Some examples include the By the Hundreds challenge, in which you read a book for every sort of 100-page count. So you read a book between 100 and 200 pages, 200 and 300 pages, all the way to over 700 pages. And you have many challenges like that, challenges in which you have to tick off books based on certain criteria. Every single book that you read throughout the year can count for a maximum of 2 prompts. However, I think there are ways to unlock a third option based on score and stuff like that, but I'm not looking into that. Maybe towards the end of the year if I'm getting desperate. So basically this runs from July the 7th until July the 6th, but you can choose your own sort of timeline based on what works for you. For me it might be July 1st rather than July 7th. I'll have to look into it again towards the end of the year, what day I started the first book that I'm counting for this. But so yeah, I am going to be updating you guys for the books that I read in July. It is possible that some of these are going to get replaced later on in the year, because I might have a book that I finished and I cannot fit it into anything, and so I might replace a book that I've used twice so that I can just count more separate books in the total challenge. But yeah, we will see throughout the year. But so, the first thing that I have added is so I'm gonna do this challenge by challenge, I guess. The first challenge is the By the Hundreds challenge. So as I just said, read a book between 100 and 199 and so on and so forth. With my July reading, I counted for reading a book between 200 and 299 pages. I counted Pets by Akwaeke Emezi. So this is a short-ish novel in which we are looking at a girl who accidentally turns a painting of her mother into a real-life being, a being who tells her that there's a monster inside the household of her best friend. I really enjoyed that one a whole lot, and so yes, very happy that I read it finally. By the Hundreds, read a book between 300 and 399 pages. For that I've currently counted The Eight by Joanna Miller, which is a historical fiction about a woman, basically about the first women who enter Oxford University knowing that they will end up with an Oxford degree at the end of their education. Up until that point, women had not been allowed to get Oxford degrees, though they had already for a while had been allowed to attend the classes. They'd just not been getting the Oxford degree at the end of things. Really enjoyed this one a whole lot. It's very much sort of like a look at these personal women. It's not as much looking at the misogyny of the time and the struggles that they face in terms of getting that education. It's definitely part of it, but definitely it is a story about these women and getting to know these women and their stories. Particularly, these women aren't just a device for us to look at this time period. Then, for By the Hundreds, I also read a book between 500 and 599 pages, which is A Song of Legends Lost by M.H. Ayinde. This is a fantasy story in which people can call upon the powers of their ancestors to help them out in battles. However, only certain people are able to do so, and one of our protagonists that we're mainly focusing on is a boy in a family that has the right or the possibility to call upon their ancestors. However, he is never chosen for this role. Now, So I've done quite some progress in that particular challenge, read 3 out of the 7 books you have to read for that challenge, but I also think that this is one of the easiest challenge for me to complete, because I do read a very wide assortment of page counts, and so this is probably the least challenging one for me to complete as well. Then there is a few challenges in which I have made no progress throughout this month, because my progress throughout this is really just like willy-nilly, let me admit to that. Like, I have put no strategy into this. I think strategy will come later on in the year, when we are like, when this is filled out naturally a little bit further, and then I can see like, okay, what do I need to focus on? So then there's also a challenge to read books for the last 10 years, and actually it can become 12 years, because you can kind of choose whether you count last 10 years as being starting in 2015 or starting in 2016, as the challenge will run across 2 calendar years. You have that choice. I do hope to complete the entire thing, so have one for every single one of the 12 years, but yeah, we'll see. So far, I have counted for the year 2020 Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Cesare, which is a horror book in which a girl is basically new to this sort of like very small town. Her and her father moved there after the death of her mother, and so she kind of naturally ends up being drawn into this group of like the teenage low lives, or that's how they are perceived in any case by the authority figures of the town, and so she kind of naturally gravitates towards them, becomes kind of part of their group. However, things start to go wrong within this town, and there's definitely from the get-go a very strange vibe that hangs in town and hangs between the adults and the teenagers. Then I also, well, that I finished in August, so this one doesn't count for this video. So that's the only one that I've so far counted for the last 10 years. This doesn't mean I haven't read any for any of the other years, like I definitely read some for 2025, for example. However, I can only count every book twice, and so that means that you have to make choices for what you're counting one book for. Then I'm also counting for all the adaptations. So this is a challenge in which you need to either watch an adaptation of a book or read a book that an adaptation is based on, or do both. For this I have gone for the TV series listing by watching Murderbot. I will also somewhere throughout this year probably reread a Murderbot book that I can then see as being like reading the book and reading the adaptation. I read the first one, but the first one I read in June, so in principle I didn't read the correct book in the same period of time. And then this is also for August. Okay, next up, disability representation. In July I read one book that I'm counting for disability representation, that is Hunchbacked by Sao Ichikawa. This is a book about a woman with a congenital muscular dystrophy, and it is a book that basically just follows her as she is living in this home, and she is a writer of erotic fiction and is a writer of some very outrageous tweets, and so we're getting to see a very different view on what disability, like on disabled people. We're painting a picture of a disabled woman that is very different from the stereotypical victim role that we see disabled people in, and so we're getting to know a very real disabled person, a very complex character. It's very short, it's only 97 pages, so too short for me to count for the read by the hundreds challenge, and it has an ending that makes you want to go back to the beginning and reread it and see things in a different light based on what you've read at the ending of the book. This same book I've then also counted for the Heritage Months challenge, because July is Disability Pride Month in the US, and so this same book could count for that one, because that would be to read a disability book in the month of the Disability Pride Month. Then for the Around the World challenge, in which you have to read a book for for each one of the continents, I read Cloud in a Cornfield for the North America one, and I've counted the 8 by Joanna Miller for the Europe continents. And this is what I meant when I say you kind of have to choose where you're placing your books, because the Sao Ishikawa book would of course been able to count for Asia here, but it would have also already been a book that I could have counted for a translated work. So you kind of have to figure out like, okay, what are the likelihoods of me finding something else that I can count for these specific books, for these specific challenges, and so basically decide which to place where. Because yeah, I could have counted that book for at least 4 challenges. Next up we have the Spooky Creatures challenge. For vampires or vampire-like creatures, I chose Summer Vamp by Violet Chan, second last name I've forgotten. So this is a graphic novel about a girl who accidentally ends up on a vampire camp. Very cutesy. Then we have Spooky Creatures Magic Users, for which I counted The Sapling Cage by Margaret Killjoy. This is a book about a trans girl who isn't out yet to society. She's out to the people around her, and she wants to be able to live her true life and be out as a girl and be a witch. However, born as a boy as she is expecting that she will not be accepted by the witches. So she decides to take her friend's place when the witches come to call. So she will pretend to be her friend, and her friend will be able to join the army, which is her wish. And so we follow her as she is navigating the beginnings of witchhood, trying to hide her true identity, trying to hide the way that she was born. Yeah, enjoyed this one. And that then also counted for the bigger queer alphabet challenge, for which this one counted for trans representation. And then another thing that I was able to count during the month of July was for the BIPOC Authors Challenge, for which you have to read 10 books by BIPOC authors. I also counted Pets by Kweki Emezi, which I've talked about before in this video. And I think that that might be it for the July books. Let's see. So that is the progress that I made throughout the month of July for the Herkiet challenge. I do believe I ended up with 8 books read out of, and that is difficult to calculate, because basically the challenge on the story graph counts 141 books, I think, but the final 5 or so of those are bonus challenges for which you will also have to read multiple books. So it is definitely behind the curve currently in terms of being able to finish this challenge, I think. So yeah, we'll just have to see how we get along with. I think we'll definitely like the first 4 months or so at least, it will really just be me reading without paying attention to this challenge too much, and just at the end of each month doing this particular video and seeing how we get along in terms of being able to log the books, and then just hopefully this will go pretty decently, so that I don't really need to like put too much emphasis on reading specifically for the challenge, because I am doing the challenge, but I will say that it's not like this is not taking over my reading life. I don't want to necessarily go out of my way to complete it. I just want to see like how we are naturally doing, I guess, and then maybe occasionally it will steer me towards maybe a specific reading vlog in which I try to get a few more in a specific challenge of this overall challenge done. For example, the 24-hour reading one, that one definitely will be a special one that I will specifically do, but yeah, aside from that, it might be fun to occasionally put in a reading vlog that is themed around Herkiet, but I also don't want this to become a stressor in my life where I'm like, oh yeah, I have to make sure that I hit this amount of prompts every single month, or otherwise I'm not going to be able to complete it. So yeah, let's see how we get along in the month of August. But so yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and see you guys for the next one. Bye!